What was your "it seemed like a good idea at the time" story? In high school, my friend discovered that he was particularly agile at running toward a wall and kicking off of it into a backflip. He would do this all day, every day, before school, at lunch, etc. One day we were inside a classroom and the teacher had stepped out for a moment. Of course he took this opportunity to try his little trick. He didn't, however, take into account the fact that drywall might not support his weight as well as the brick and concrete walls he'd tried before. His leg ended up busting straight through the wall to the other side, into a classroom full of students taking an exam. So I wasn't actually in the class taking the exam, but to this day, I still imagine how strange and hilarious it would be to be sitting in that class then suddenly see a leg burst through the wall. Makes me smile just thinking about it. I ran across the street with my eyes closed. When I was 14. I didn't get hit by a car. However, I ran into a tree headfirst and cut my face and knee open. For all of you asking what my thought process was, it is as follows. Who am I kidding? I have no idea what I was thinking. When I was a kid I tried to ride my bike up the trunk of a tree so I could kick off and try to land it and it'd be really cool. Turns out a tree trunk is rounded and so you'll just slip off the trunk and hit your head on the tree. My brother still gives me shit about trying to ride my bike up a tree. Shooting each other with fireworks on New Year's. One landed directly in between my eyes. Luckily, it didn't go off and I wasn't injured. And with July 4th around the corner, I feel it's pertinent to remind everyone to please be safe with your fireworks out there. Remember kids, only shoot fireworks at the people you hate. Burns myself with a firework. Edit. Whoever gave me my first gold, you sir, or ma'am, are a breathtaking person. It hurt itself in its confusion. Oh, he's not confused. He knows exactly what he's doing. Holding onto my friend's car mirror while skateboarding on a newly paved parking lot. Road rash sucks donkey balls. Particularly when you are not wearing a shirt. Me and my friend used to play a game where we threw a Swiss Army knife up in the air at nighttime and then ran away from it. With the knife part out. We did similar with a potato gun. We had it rigged so you could slap the bottom and that would ignite it, so we shot potatoes up in the air like mortars at night and ran until we heard the thud of it hitting the ground again. I had a pretty gnarly bruise one time from when we decided to have a naval battle with potato guns when I was maybe 15. We were at a friend's lake house. We went to Walmart and bought a bunch of cheap inflatable rafts with paddles. They were definitely not made for two people, but we had one gunner and one rower on each raft. The gunners pretty quickly learned you could skip the potatoes off the water and have a better chance of hitting something. Got hit in the back by a chunk of skipping potato from like 50 yards off. Hurt like a bitch. Honestly, the naval battle part was a ton of fun. We should have just done it with paintballs and masks instead of potato guns. That's how the British defeated the Spanish Armada. They skipped cannonballs off the water from out of Spanish cannonball range, which were being arced up. That's how the British defeated the Spanish Armada. Till potato guns were used in the Spanish Armada. LPT, reading only the first line of Reddit posts allows me to absorb much more knowledge. Being roommates with someone I had a huge crush on. It didn't end well. Playing sled dog with my newly rescued husky and a long board on the hilly streets near my house in college. Snapped my right forearm in half and had to walk a mile back home to get a ride to the hospital. Moving in with my girlfriend. I fucked up. It's a disaster that I should have seen coming. Hey, you know those degenerates who you stay out drinking with until sunrise every other day? Why don't you live with them for the last 2 years of law school? That won't cause any issues at all. Cue 2 years of abuse to my body and liver and more than a little strain between me and my friends at the time. Overall it was fun, but definitely not a good idea. Yeah, I did this too. If you make friends with the party people in your dorm, don't move in with them after first year. Move in with the studious people in your dorm, but go party with your party friends once in a while. Your home life will be quiet and conducive to studying and your party friends will stay friends. It's real hard to stay friends with those people when you live with them because they can be incredibly selfish and inconsiderate because partying comes first and your studies, sleep, job come last always. So back in the day my brothers and I were shooting a bow and arrow behind our house. We had a proper backstop and a nice target on a bale of hay. After about an hour we were getting bored and one of my brothers had a stroke of genius. Let fucking light one on fire. So there we are wiring rags to arrows and soaking them in gas and shooting stuff. Didn't take long and half the yard was on fire. We'd shot pretty much every flammable thing we could burn in the yard. Since we were running short on stuff to shoot, my brother decided to launch one in a 45 degrees arc over the woods behind the house. We all watched sore laughing and giggling. When it hit the apex was when it dawned on us that this was in fact a really stupid fucking idea. All 6 of us sprinted off into the woods in the direction it had been shot. Wasn't hard to find, it'd light an entire little meadow on fire. So we ran around stomping out fires for an hour. When we finally got the fire put out, we were sitting by the creek and my oldest brother looks at us all and says, "Dad never hears a word about this." I let my 14-year-old cousin at the time try driving the family car. I was like 18 back then or 20, and I told him it's easy to drive an automatic car, basically like driving a go-kart. Told him gas was right and brakes were center. I forgot to mention that changing the gear to D will automatically have the car move. We both panicked and hit a fucking tree in front of us at probably 1 mile per hour. Luckily we were in our neighborhood by a dead end. Lol. My dad got out of the car one time and left it running when I was like 0.5, so this was 95 feet or 96 feet. He literally just put it in park, got out, left the door open, and was rummaging through the trunk for something while parked on a very private side street. It was very slightly downhill. Me, being 5, hops over into the driver's seat, puts it in drive, still not sure how I did it, and reached the brakes, I don't remember that much, and the car just starts moving. I panicked as much as my dad, and I'll never forget just freezing as I see him just jump, take 3 massive strides, throw me in the passenger seat and hit the brake. When I was 15, my best friend and I just got new BB pistols. They were the Walther CP99. Looked identical to the real Walther CP9 with a removable magazine and no orange tip. We were playing with them in the back seat of his mom's car. They weren't loaded, we were just excited and wanted to take them out of the box. She knew we had them out and didn't think anything of it. This was the late 90s, by the way. Before going back to his house, she went through the drive-thru at Burger King. You know where this is going. She's ordering food with 2 large 15-year-olds holding guns and pointing them at everything. Fast forward 30 minutes, we are pulling into their driveway and his dad comes running out of the house yelling historically. One of his friends just called and said he heard on the police scanner that they were looking for his vehicle with 2 white males holding a female hostage at gunpoint. Few minutes later several police cars pull in the driveway, jump out with guns out, making everyone get on the ground. It took some explaining on his dad's part about us being a bunch of dumb asses. 15-year-old me couldn't figure out what all the fuss was about, but 34-year-old me looks back and realizes that might be the dumbest thing I have ever done. Yelling historically. What is thou doing brandishing such armaments in front of thine matron? The constable will be here post haste. Edit. I thank the assemblage for gifts of tribute. Applying for a PhD position. Shitty pay and no free time in sight for the next 3 years. Thanks to it I despise working in science like never before. In 5th grade one invented a game, where you get the swing as high and fast as you can, then at the bottom you run off it really fast. Mistimed it, landed on my head on asphalt, got a serious concussion. Edit. Here's a carefully drawn and highly realistic depiction of what happened. So I was in Uganda with my family, and we see a large, about 5 feet tall, curled up leaf hanging about 8 feet off the ground. We're told that these leaves curl up and fall out the trees, and they're pretty heavy, so it can be dangerous to have it fall on you. My dad and I think, won't it be helpful of us to get this thing down? So, we're there whacking it with sticks, trying to get it down, to no avail, when my dad says, "Hey, climb up on that wall there, son, and jump. Grab it and then pull it down." Well, that sounds like a swell idea, Dad. So I do just that. I don't manage to get it all the way down, but as soon as I hit the ground, I get this burning sensation in my elbow. Turns out there's a hive of Ugandan mud wasps living in this specific leaf, and they do not take kindly to young men trying to tug their home down. So I'm just sprinting back to the office where the rest of my family is sheltered from the sun, and I practically have 2 elbows on one arm at this point while, as my dad described it later, an army of large, black blots give chase. I make it back inside and my arm is numb, except for the searing pain in my elbow. Thankfully, there was no further reaction, the pain lasted only around 3 hours and the swelling was down by the end of the day. That being said, it was the worst pain I've ever felt. Even worse than the time I broke my arm into 3 pieces while arm wrestling. Starting a career in television in the late 90s. I mean, the internet is cool and all, but it's still way too slow to ever compete with 200 TV channels, right? I relate. Me at the same time, learning printing. Our factory's biggest contracts were for making maps, newsletters for organizations, flyers, phone books, TV guide and magazines. Nobody's ever gonna stop needing those, right? LMAO. I went on a solo trip to Costa Rica when I was 26. I'm a fairly petite female. I speak no Spanish. The eco lodge I was staying at helped me arrange a guide for an all-day hike. We were flown by 4-seater plane into the jungle, a 26-hour walk to the nearest town. We landed, Jose and I hopped out, and the plane took off again, leaving me, Jose and his machete alone for the day. Thankfully it went okay, but as soon as that plane took off I realized I had made a bad choice. Snow water skiing. Me driving the snowmobile across a snowy field and my little brother skiing behind holding a tow rope. 2 broken legs. When I was a teenager. My brother, cousin, and a couple of friends decided to try to steal a Coke vending machine by tipping it over into the back of a Ford Ranger pickup and take off. We were like, shit, we'll just put it in our garage and have plenty of soda and we'll refill it. We had one of those keys for them. It was 2 in the morning and we're all wasted. This was mid-90s, mind you, and way out in the country. There was a little store with the machine. We backed up and my brother and I got it rocking back and forth and finally blam into the back of the truck. It lifted the front end of the truck off the ground, and as soon as it landed in the bed my buddy started hauling ass with me trying to jump into the bed with the vending machine, and my brother hopped on the back of the vending machine riding it like a majestic horse. But we forgot to unplug it, and for some reason it was juiced enough that it pulled the machine out the truck with my brother on it and crashed to the ground. We were young, dumb, and bored as hell. But it made perfect sense to me then. Nothing like committing dangerous major felonies just to cop like 3 cases of soda and a shitty obviously stolen fridge, lol. It was winter in New York. I was on my way to a party in the Lower East Side with my girlfriend. There was still plenty of snow on the ground from a recent storm. We were having dinner beforehand, and since the party was only a neighborhood away, we decided to walk the distance. Somewhere around Soho I notice a yellow cab letting out a passenger, when the car behind it started laying on its horn. The cab was barely in the intersection, not really blocking traffic, and he was simply doing his job. But the car behind it just kept honking. Then they just held the horn down. So I bent down, made a snowball, and threw it at the noisy car. The horn immediately stopped. I shouted, "Shut the fuck up." Almost instantly, 2 men get out of the car and yell, "Hey! Come here." To which I yelled back, "Why? What are you gonna do, call the cops?" To which they replied, "We are the cops." Oh. It was an unmarked cop car. I yelled back at them, "Oh, fuck off," as they walked towards me. We then had a very heated discussion about me having too much to drink and them acting like cunts. It ended with them telling me to go home and not to the party. Then I went to the party. Going on a 4-day bender with no sleep. Ended up getting the shit kicked out of me and required 7 stitches in the back of my head, spending 2 months' wages, losing my brand new £1,000 phone and pissing off numerous ex-girlfriends by declaring my love for them. Oh, and I was hungover for about a week. Haven't had a drink for 3 months now because of my stupidity. I had just finished this bike ride with my scout troop and we ended it at the side of a river. So waiting for our parents to pick us up, the boys all go to a rope swing to fuck around in the river. It was absurdly shallow, the furthest swing would still land you in 3-foot water, average lazy swing was 2 feet deep or so. Mom comes, some dad hollers at me that she's arrived. I run back until I can see her getting out of the car and yell, "One more swing mom, I'll be right back." She seems in a good mood, says okay, starts chatting with other adults there. So not 2 minutes later I walk up to her with a broken arm. I had gone back for that one more swing, screwed up and planted my wrist into the shallow water, broke my arm, and got out of the water saying bye without telling the kids what I'd done. Just sorta walked up to my mom, hey, I just broke my arm, sorry. She was not pleased, like, seriously flick_my_bic, you HAADDDD to go for one more swing. Come on, let's go get a cast, you idiot. On a rainy day, I saw a hitchhiker near the university asking for a ride. He looked the part of a student. Although I never pick up hitchhikers, I felt sorry for him standing in the rain and gave him a lift. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. He told me where he was headed, so I went out of my way to drive him there. The guy just kept staring at me and said very little. When we arrived at his destination, he wouldn't get out of my car, no matter what. Finally, when a police officer came along, I told him to hop out or I'd call the cop over for help. That ended it. But if the officer hadn't come by, I have no idea what might have happened. This reminds me of a friend of mine from high school named Keelan and his hitchhiking in the rain story. He was walking back from a friend's house along this decently heavy traffic road. It started pouring down really hard and he still had like 15 to 20 minutes more of walking to go, so he just lifted his shirt over his head to shield the rain a bit. This truck sort of like this one sees him and pulls over and yells out to him if he wanted a ride to get out of the rain. He accepts and gets into the truck and starts guiding him where he needs to go. The drive wasn't going to be very long, but from the get-go the driver made things a little uneasy for him. He had a worried feeling at the bottom of his stomach, so he decided to tell him to stop about 5 blocks from his house so he wouldn't know exactly where he lives. Keelan thanks the man and as he's getting out the driver blurts out, "Hey, would you like a blowjob before you go?" Keelan was completely shocked by that, but he was also an extremely nice and polite guy, so he just says, "Thanks, but I'm okay." The driver replies by saying, "That's fine, you're a good-looking guy and just thought I'd ask." It was such a bizarre moment, but Keelan was glad this guy wasn't like super aggressive and tried to force him to do something since he was a pretty scrawny guy. After that he decided to never take a ride from a stranger again in case the next person wasn't as polite as that guy. Keelan actually got the blow job though, didn't he? Keelan_. Law school. Lol. Having sex with Sherry. She gave me crabs. Thanks for watching our video. If you like it, please smash the subscribe and like button to support the channel so that we can create more quality content in the future.